Chair. We'll call meeting to order. It is 5 o'clock. I think we'll skip over the approval of the minutes until we have 3 board members. If Director Williams shows up, we will do it later. If not, we'll just carry it over to the next meeting. So we'll jump right into the review. And first up is the 100 series. And most of these, it looks like we're the adding of Janet's name to everything. So I appreciate that getting in there. I didn't know if there's really anything else in that 100 series that we needed to address. I think that was kind of the big thing from our last review session. So,
right.
Are there any other lingering things that we needed to hit?
No, sir.
All right. I like that. So we can jump right into the 200 series. I think like last time, I don't know that we need to go through one line at a time, but rather go through anything that folks had, noticed as they reviewed it, unless you all really want to go through it one page at a time. Guess nobody wants to do that.
So format worked well last time, Sean.
All right. I have a couple notes. There's Lisa. Welcome.
No, you're fine.
We need show up as soon as we started.
We just real quick kind of reviewed the 100s because we had done them last time and we had some changes. So we're jumping into the 200 series now and going over some notes. So I had a couple notes and a bunch of them kind of get lumped together, and it's all of the committees stuff. I don't remember what pages they're on, but Ed Committee and Ops Committee and P&G. The one thing that I think may be on all of them is that the committees, it says in there that the committee will be, maybe it's not on the Ed Committee, will be reviewed or renewed during the fall board retreat. And we either need to change that to be at the organizational meeting, or we move when our fall board retreat is so that it's after the organizational meeting, one or the other. I'd be okay with changing it to the organizational meeting, but then you're asking new board members to kind of sign up like via a Google Doc or something ahead of them being placed on the board.
But I wonder if we could just incorporate into new board member training, like a quick description of the committees so that they have an idea of what they can sign up for, and then do it that.
And we finalize it in that part of the organizational.
Yeah.
Is everybody cool with that, saying that?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing Lisa say, right, is that when you guys come in as new board members and we meet with you and talked about a few things, we'd give a good review of what those committees look like so that when board leadership submits what committees you'd be interested in, they have an informed decision, and then you just place them at the organization meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah.
I do have a sheet that has the list of committees and kind of what they,
Yeah.
it might just make sure they're all accounted for.
That's typically what we have.
Explains what they are.
Yeah.
Figure out who was on it previously to ask how hard is this?
Yeah. No, exactly. No, exactly. I was going to say, I remember still when I didn't know what the heck they were trying to find from.
Yeah.
But if we got the sheet during orientation, and then they could look at the descriptions and then ask questions, if they had questions during orientation, that seems like, because I feel like that's one of the very first things they do, or I did at least, was come meet everybody. So just,
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
The other piece I had to that was most of the ones that are committees of 3, say 2 alternates, and I don't know that we've had 2 alternates for most of them. Do we want to start, or do we just want to change them to say with 1 alternate? I thought tonight would have been the first time when we might have needed 2 alternates because you weren't going to be here for a while. It would have been the first time that we would have actually used 2. So I'm inclined to leave it as 1 alternate.
1 alternate I think is fine.
At that point, you already got a majority of the board committed to it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think like if we had ourselves in this situation, which is really great because Dromi stepped down a little early. Like if somebody steps down instead of relying on the we could
Fill the role.
Right,
fill the role and then still have an alternate.
exactly.
And do it, I think that's
Yeah,
probably. the better
I don't
way.
think we need to
Yeah.
change the alternate.
Good call.
Yeah.
All right. Again, on the committee thing, let's see, it's under the Ed Committee. It says the committee will be a committee of the whole, which it is, with administration participation. I'm glad it says you guys get to participate. But then it says 3 staff members nominated by ICEA.
Yep,
Are we,
we've done it.
is it,
We have, I mean, the administrative teams and the leadership roles keep poaching my people, so I'm losing them.
I
So
felt
the- Yeah, the people that have been on it with me have moved into different roles, so I'll get a couple of people, to be honest.
Yeah, because usually we have had 3 in
We've
the
had 3,
past.
yeah.
I mean, I don't
Just-
think we've recognized who they were, maybe.
Yep,
so these would be, just to make sure I got it clear in my head, would be 3 permanent folks that would come to every meeting in addition to whoever happens to be there doing whatever presentation they're getting for that.
yep.
Yeah, I think that's what the spirit of it is. I think we've, like Brady said, there's been changeover of staff, and we have had staff there to do presentations, but
Yeah.
I think this is probably looking for some consistent
Yeah.
participation there, so, yeah.
That was all my notes on committees. I had one other note, and I'm trying to find it to remind myself what it was. Oh, it's actually this process, because there is, I think it's 209.6, talks about the policy review timing. And, you know, we've kind of changed that up quite a bit, right, as to how we're doing it. If I can get down there and tell you what page it's on. So 34?
It is.
Ah, finally made it down there.
Yep.
It doesn't, basically says at least once every 4 years, so that's sort of the cover your bases thing, because we're doing it at least every 4 years. But it seems kind of weird to leave it that way when we've really changed kind of the entire process around the policy review, where everything's getting an annual review. Do we want to lock that in more directly?
As far as just saying the regular review, Sean, the yearly review?
Yeah. I mean, we're just getting into it
Right.
and
So-
assuming that it's gonna work, right?
Right.
So I'm a little hesitant to say that it's gonna happen. But at the same time, saying once every 4 years seems,
That seems
like an overreach.
Very, yeah. But I don't know if I want to change it to once every, just because, I don't know.
Do you want to split the baby and do every 2 years? Because no matter what, we should be having new board members, or in theory,
Yes.
Yeah.
Board
there's an
members
election
every 2 years.
And that may be a good time to have everybody review and weigh in.
yeah, I was gonna suggest leaving the at least part and then just changing it to at least once every 2 years, and we can continue on this practice, and then if we get behind, we're not
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
I think that-
really
Yeah,
stuck.
I like splitting it to at least once every 2 years.
And that is all of my notes from the 200s, so I didn't know if, sure, everybody else read them verbatim and took extensive notes more than I did, so. Have at it.
I have something that I think we'll probably want to work with legal counsel on, but it's the public participation at board meetings. As recently as, what was it, this summer or this fall, we kind of talked around being a little bit more clear in what kind of comment or behavior, you know, when it violates some things as far as obscenity or hate symbols or things of that nature, that we might want to root a little bit more into some policy there. And so I don't have anything from legal counsel to suggest for that matter, but I guess I wanted to bring it up from the committee to see if that was something you wanted us to explore, and then we would work with Joe on what some additional language around that would be.
Do you know where it is?
Is it-
Did I not tell you?
Is it
213?
251.
Sorry, maybe you said it and I missed it. I know. so I don't want to,
213.1G1.
didn't want to jump out of order there, but
So
there
that's
are
Page 53 or 4.
a handful of these policies in these 200s that are also in the policy primer. So there are updates in those that are not reflected in these 200s. Yep.
Yep.
In case somebody missed that, they will be reflected here shortly when we get to that part.
And that was gonna be the second part of what I said, Sean. There's another portion in there, which I don't think is on the one we have in here, but is the petitions to place the topic on the agenda. That'll be in the primer, so,
Right.
yeah.
That's why I was
Yeah, I think that's
something
where you're
along
going.
those
That's
lines
based
in
on the
that primer.
legislative changes there, but I guess mine was more on the initial policy, even if it was just as is.
Yeah.
You know, is that something we have to be a little bit careful with it, right? Because it gets into, you don't want to get into a point where you're limiting free speech or things of that nature, but I think that's why we just want to work on it close with legal around what that is, but I do think there's some obvious things like hateful speech or obscenity, things like that, that we can make clear and not allowed.
When we made our statement early this year, right, at our second board meeting, right, Joe had put stuff together, but he had pulled stuff straight out of our policies.
Yeah.
It's like, here's how you're following your policy. So is it covered in other places already and we can refer to those sections?
It's covered in a limited fashion, Sean. I think this would be, you know, if the board wants to go further, but I think, yeah, he did root it in there. When you look at,
I mean, I'm not even sure they're in necessarily these 200.
So if you look at general guidelines, I think he pulled some components from the general guidelines portion.
I'd be interested.
And then, sorry, Lisa, the other place to look is just the regular 213 where it talks about public participation in board meetings. And there's some comments there about appropriateness and things like that, so, sorry.
I'd be interested in getting legal counsel's thoughts, specifically as it relates to if somebody comes and just so flagrantly crosses the line. They threaten to, you know, violence on a board member, or they just use like obvious hate speech, like not close to the line, obvious hate speech. What we could write in here that would ban them from coming and talking at any future meetings without any further notice. Because what I don't like is that you come to a meeting and you say really hateful, egregious things, and then you're warned, and then you come back every week in front of the people that you've done harm to, and now you like are more polite. Like that's to me not acceptable. And so I'd be interested, you know, if you do X, Y, or Z type of speech, you're done. You don't get to come back to board meetings, period. If we can do that. Or if Joe says, oh, you have to have a notice procedure and give them chances and what have you. But I would suspect that we can target certain types of speech that are so unexcusable that results. And then we build that into the policy, and that's the notice that people get.
And I think that was part of the, thanks for bringing that up, because I think that was part of our challenge, you know, in other circumstances has been what is our ability to do any of that, either in the moment or ahead of a, you know, potential thing. If you look at the bottom, I found it there finally, what I was looking for. It's, I think it's page 51 at the bottom of Code 213. That's where it talks about decorum for the meetings. And so it's pretty generalized, right? And so if there's any more teeth per se that you want to put into that or want to be any more clear about those components, it sounds like from hearing Director Williams, that's one thing we can look at. So I think it's one that would probably take, you know, a few conversations, you know, before we're comfortable with it, but I think it's one we can mark as an ongoing one for some of our P&G meetings here to look at.
And I'd be interested in legal counsel, can we get a order banning, like a trespass order, preventing them from coming back on school grounds? And I believe we've done that in other, not at board meetings, but we've done that in other circumstances, and if there'd be ground to do that. If we have to. And I'm not saying we ever had a speaker that we have to do that yet, but just thinking that, seeing some of these other school board meetings in Iowa.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, well, there you go, I wasn't gonna.
Well, right, I mean,
But yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
thinking.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially around this, like you guys are talking, the safety provision, right? The clearly delineating what that would look
Yeah.
like and what that's gonna be, so.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
I'll work on that one then.
There other thoughts on other 200s stuff?
I only had a question, just because it's been brought up a couple of times, including today. The participation by the public at board meetings. People ask about way to participate virtually. I mean, do we want to specify that it's only in person, so that way we can point at board policy to say that, because there's issues with trying to do it virtually because of technology that we don't have, and the cost of that technology is just not realistic for us to spend on that. But I think if we spell out that participation at the public, by the public at board meetings is done in person during said board meetings.
Yeah, I think that we can detail that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I do wonder, I mean, it's hard to predict what the future will bring, right? Like, that never was a thing,
Right,
right?
but
Until it became a thing, so it's
unless
hard
we
to
get
say.
a leprechaun with a pot of gold,
Yeah.
that's the only future I can see. I mean, because it is quite expensive, and I just couldn't see any board wanting to spend that type of money just for that when we have all these other needs, educational needs that directly impact students.
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces there, though, that when we talked about, you know, we're no longer live streaming for reasons, right? And that's become a problem, even if they're not trying to
Yeah.
comment, right? They can't watch it live, so.
Well, because of that it's not accessible for everybody.
Right, so I think I would, if I was going to pick one of those two things to put resources into, would be making it, you know, more accessible live, that people can at least watch it. But either way, I think that takes quite a bit of resource to do that. So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really an audio issue in here with the substantial audio upgrade that would have to happen to make all of that possible. So you're right, it would be a significant financial commitment from the district to make that possible, but I think we could easily clear that, you know, engagement in those meetings needs to happen in person. I mean, we could even put in there unless otherwise provided by law, you know, for some kind of an event, or,
I
you know,
like that,
just
yeah.
like we did with COVID, you know, we were allowed to do virtual meetings, so then we did, but, so we can work on that portion too.
Okay.
Anything else on 200 before we move on? All right, let's go ahead and move on down to the policy primers. I went through them, and I found one thing that is, I think it's just like a minor typo thing, but I didn't know if it needed any talking to going through the, I guess, the overview page that came from ISB. Does anybody feel the need to go through that? I mean, I am curious as to why the communication channels policy was just axed.
Rescinded.
I'm not really sure what the reason was for that.
All it says is it overlaps board policies.
That's what I was gonna say, it's just, a lot of that language is accounted for in other board policy we have, so I think they probably saw it as a extra that wasn't necessary. I mean, like if you look at our student complaints or grievances policy, you know, if they had a problem with the policy with the board, the provision for that really reads very similar to that first paragraph, so I think it's accounted for in other places would be my guess, Sean.
Well, the only thing I found, I'll just mention it on the 105, the assistant animals one. All the red stuff's crossed off except like kind of middle of the page. There's a thing marked in red that I think is supposed to also be struck. It's struck in the primer, the guidance page, just not in our policy.
I'm sorry,
It's-
say that again, Sean?
And
I get what you're saying, but I can't get it to
on
open.
the 105,
Yeah.
about halfway down in the establishing the need for service animal, it's marked in red for
Gotcha.
assisted, but it's not
Oh.
crossed out.
Oh, it should have the strike through it, that's what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Gotcha.
I just want to make sure it got struck before
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
went in close.
This is Amy's favorite policy, so any questions should be directed to Deputy Superintendent Cormier.
I defer to the former assistant who also worked on this policy.
I could sell your miniature horse out back.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to
Run away
see
from this
miniature
one.
horses.
I kind of want.
I'm gonna do everything I can do to get Finley a miniature horse. Better build a stable behind
Become a
that.
quest.
It would be kind of awesome, actually.
I know some dog names intricately right now in the district, let's just tell you how
Yeah.
close and personal they are to this.
Gosh.
This was just one that the further we dug into it, every time it seemed like there was more differences between the type of animals and what you're required to do and level of training and.
I mean, I can't ask questions, I can.
I was trying to read it, like, they were striking the assistants, or whatever the language is, which I think somewhere it has them crossing off the use of chimps as assistant. That would be fun too. But nope, not anymore. Anyway, I digress. I didn't have anything else as I kind of ran through the
I didn't have.
individual ones. I don't know, was there anything that needed to be highlighted that you know of? Matt?
I don't think so.
Okay, you probably read more than any of us.
I mean, we don't have that public participation one in there for the reason we had the conversation earlier, so that would be another one that,
Yeah, we need to bring that back. That was 513, right?
213.
213. Yeah. I'm already jumping ahead 3 months.
So-
Any other thoughts there? Go ahead.
No, I don't know if you want to go back up to
Yep,
approve.
I was
Okay.
going to jump back to,
Just checking. So-
I just want to make sure we were done. But we can jump back to B and approve our minutes from our last meeting. So I would
Ow.
entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Check. Our next meeting, this, I mean, you know, the plan will be to have it at the same as our regular board meeting on the fourth Tuesday. I believe that's the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. And we
Oh,
will
wait, you meet
have,
that week?
we do meet that week. We won't have one in December, but we do have 2 in November.
Okay.
We will not have seated any new board members because that happens after the P&G meeting. So
Oh.
So you're telling me
two
I get another
get a
invitation
comment
back?
again.
Well,
What do you
no,
want?
you
No,
don't
you-
know that. Wait, yeah.
You're still a board member.
Dang it, when is
regardless.
my last meeting?
That
That
one?
P&G meeting, maybe.
No. After that. But it won't be, so
Okay, but,
give it
yeah,
a rest.
okay.
So,
We're still,
so that's the
on
date for it,
duty.
and I think the 5 o'clock prior to the regular board meeting works pretty good.
yeah.
Just, it's not on here. At the meeting tonight, when we review policy, we're gonna, well, before we approve the agenda, we're gonna remove the dress code policy from it because there's some last minute changes that
Yeah.
we will still need to address. And so that what's on there is not ready to
The-
go.
Got it.
Yeah, we had some substantive changes come back from the equity team, and it wouldn't have made sense to go through and do a reading or even, you know, do the reading with the incorrect policy. We could have just removed it from action, but I just think it makes sense to revisit at a different time, so.
No,
We want to get this one right.
I appreciate that.
So we will do that. But if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?